I saw that play.
I work with this
I
girl.
guess we're rolling now, so I won't say it.
Jerry, I work with this girl at the pharmacy, and
Okay.
her mom was the cook.
Oh, wow.
All right, Acts 21. We are live. With no way to edit the beginning of the tape. Acts 21. So this will be Acts 21 Part B. We left off about verse 24 last time, so let's just back up a few verses just to get back in the context. Verse 20. And when they heard it, they glorified the Lord and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law. And they are informed of thee, speaking of Paul, that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. What is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that thou art come. And let's just stop right there for a minute. Come over to Galatians. Let's just grab a couple of verses in Galatians. You know, this whole thing about circumcision. You know, back then, 2,000 years ago, circumcision was sort of like the religious ceremony, the religious
Baptism.
what's the word I'm looking for? Ordinance. There's still one more word, a custom.
Ritual.
Ritual. That is the word I'm looking for.
Come on
Thank you.
down.
Was the ritual that everybody, you know, placed the preeminence on, much like today you would see with water baptism. So when you read this, just insert water baptism to kind of bring it into today's time. But Galatians chapter 3, I'm going to read two passages in Galatians. Galatians 3 verse 1, Paul says, O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you, that you should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ hath been evidently set forth, crucified among you? This only would I learn of you. Received ye by the Spirit of the works, received ye by the Spirit by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? Are ye so foolish, having begun in the Spirit, are ye now made perfect by the flesh? In Galatians 3. Come down to verse 7. Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, let's see. I know I was going somewhere with this. He that ministered unto you in the Spirit, and worketh miracles among you, doeth he it by the works of the law, or the hearing of faith? Okay, now come down to verse 10. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For as it is written, Cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, it is evident, for the just shall live by faith. And the law is not of faith, that the man who doeth them shall live in them. Come over to chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. The yoke of bondage, the law. Verse 2, Behold, I, Paul, say unto you, that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Okay, if they're going to keep one part of the law, they are a debtor to carry out the entire law. That's the whole gist of it right there, and that's actually where I was meaning to go when I went to chapter 3. All right, so chapter 5 there. If you're going to follow one part, you've got to follow it all. All right, and people, like I say, it was just that ordinance. It was that ritual that people just, you know, people love being religious and doing religious rituals. And that hasn't changed through today. Over in chapter 6 of Galatians, here's what it's all about. All these rituals. And again, back then it was circumcision. Think of the ritual that applies to today. Verse 12, As many as desire to make a fair show in the flesh, they constrain you to be circumcised 2,000 years ago. Plug in water baptism today. They constrain you to be water baptized, if you will, only lest they should suffer persecutions for the cross of Christ. For neither they themselves who are Again, you could put in water baptized today, keep the law, but desire to have you water baptized that they may glory in your flesh. Okay, now I'm making an application there. Okay, the word was always circumcised in here, but today that's the ritual that you can sure split families about and split churches for that matter. I mean, people just, they love their religious rituals. And yeah.
And tradition.
And traditions. The tradition, you know, on our way back to Acts, stop in Romans chapter 11. Chapter 10. Romans chapter 10. Romans chapter 10, verse 1. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. Sound familiar? Okay. People have a zeal for God, but watch this in verse 3. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. And that's it right there. People want to go about and establish their own righteousness.
I have a question about that. Is it one's own righteousness if a religion tells you to, not tells you, but says, okay, if you go and, you know, give X amount of dollars and light candles and pray that you can pray somebody out of purgatory? Is it, when you do that, based on what you were taught by that particular religion, is that your righteousness, or is that wanting, is that what?
Well,
Is
what
that
you would be
wanting
doing
God
is,
to do that?
what, if I think I understand the question properly, they would be going about to establish their own righteousness by the works that they're doing. And just like we read back in Galatians, if you think you need to follow any point of the law to establish your own righteousness, you've got to carry out the entire law.
But what if you're doing it, what did I tell you, George? Out of
I'm sorry.
ignorance or fear?
I wasn't listening. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
When we were coming home, I mean, you know, it was like when you know, because like, let's say somebody dies and you want to pray that
Yeah.
person out of purgatory.
Oh.
How can that be your righteousness? Because that's what you were told. If you do this, this can happen. And if you know nothing else, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You're
so
actually doing it.
you're
for
doing
this-
it in ignorance. However, even in ignorance, you're being taught that you have to work for
Okay.
righteousness. So you would be following
That
works.
act is a work.
Yeah, an act is a work. Thank you. Great
Okay.
definition right there, if you will.
Well, then look at Paul. Paul did it in ignorance, yet he was guilty charged.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because it was him. Can't blame anybody else.
Exactly. Yeah, ignorance is, you can't tell the cop out here if you get pulled, if you're going 45 and it's a 35 zone, you can't say, well, I didn't know it was a 45 speed limit. Ignorance is no
It doesn't change the fact of
excuse.
the matter, right? Whether you're ignorant or not, it still is.
That's right. Exactly. Thank you. Okay, so back to Acts 21 now. But people just love, it's like we want to do something for God as if we could do something for Him. So back to Acts 21 and our study of the book of Acts. So verse 22, what is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that thou art come. Do therefore this that we say to thee. We have 4 men which have a vow on them. Take them and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads. And all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly, and keepest the law. As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangled, and from fornication. Okay, that's the 4 ordinances back there, Acts chapter 15. Let's just flip back there real quick. Acts 15. So at the beginning of Acts 15, that's when Paul went back to meet with Peter and the 12, right? And then verse 19, the conclusion. And this is James talking, verse 19. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to God. but that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. Okay, the 4 ordinances that were put on the Gentiles. Right? Okay, so now back in Acts 21, just want to make sure we're putting that together. So verse 26, then Paul took the men, and the next day, purifying himself with them, entered into the temple. Okay, not a synagogue, the temple. This is the temple. So no, Gentiles were not allowed in the temple. Gentiles could go into the synagogue, but they could not go into the temple. All right, and we're going to see why in a minute here. Into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, until that an offering should be offered for every one of them. And yes, that's an animal sacrifice. Okay, that offering. They're still following the daily animal sacrifices. I'm sorry? So not the major animal sacrifices like Passover or Pentecost. This would just be like the daily sacrifices, the animal sacrifices that they would do. Like for 4 people, pardon me, go buy a turtle dove and give that as an animal sacrifice, and that'll cover the 4 of you.
They do it daily?
Daily sacrifices.
Wow. I'm surprised.
Yeah,
they
this
still
is
have
all
animals.
following, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so verse 27, and when the 7 days were almost, so it was the 7 days of purification, okay? So when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which were of Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people and laid hands on him, crying out, Men of Israel, help! This is the man that teaches all men everywhere against the people and the law and this place the temple. And further brought Greeks also into the temple, and hath polluted this holy place. So you see right there that Greeks, that Gentiles never were allowed in the temple. All right, it would pollute the temple. We Gentiles were nothing but dirty dogs. You know, that's just the way we were and are according to Jewish law. That never changed. And just as we saw, give me 1 second here. Just as we, actually, let's go back there to Matthew. Go back to Matthew.
Now, that would have been directed at God, though.
I'm sorry?
That would have been directed at God back in
Matthew
the day,
15.
right? That
Absolutely.
Gentiles weren't allowed in there again.
Matthew 15. The Lord Jesus Christ, while he was on earth. Verse 21. Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast. So she's a Greek. Matter of fact, just write in your margin there, Mark 7:26 actually calls her a Greek over there. In that passage of this same story, Mark 7:26. I'm going to go just grab it and read it. But stay where you are in Matthew there. Verse 26, so this is Mark 7:26. The woman was a Greek. Okay, so it just says it. Absolutely, she was a Greek. All right, Matthew 5:22. And behold, a woman of Canaan, a Greek, came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he, Christ, answered and said to this lady who says, My daughter has a devil, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay? That's Christ saying, I can't help you. I'm sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. See? We Gentiles were just dogs, even in the eyes of the Lord Jesus Christ back there. Wow. Now, just to finish the story, because the third time she does come back, verse 27, and she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith, Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. But what if she would have stopped after 2 times? Her daughter wouldn't have been healed. Well, so back to Acts 21 now. So you see this is just, it's Jewish law. It's from God himself. Okay, the Jews were his chosen people. Genesis 12, the promise to Abraham, I'll bless them that bless thee, I'll curse them that curse thee. All right, so now so Acts 21. Notice that verse 29 is in parentheses. So just to back up at the end of 28 there, and further brought Greeks also into the temple, and hath polluted this holy place. Parentheses. For they had seen before with him in the city of Trophimus, an Ephesian, whom they supposed that Paul had brought into the temple. Okay, they thought he had brought one in, but he didn't. Paul knew that it was not lawful to do that. And let's come out. One thing you should be asking right here too. Now wait a minute. I see Paul doing all these different things. He's purifying himself. He's going with these guys that are shaving their heads. Keep your hand in Acts 21. That is the study. But 1 Corinthians 9. I believe we even did this last week. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19. For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. And unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. And to them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without law, as without law, being not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain the more that are without law. To the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. And I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. And this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be partaker thereof with you. Okay, so Paul was all things to all men. Nothing, or it's not anything that any of us in this room can do today. Paul's the only one in your Bible, for that matter, that could do that. All right, so that's what's going on back here. It's all because of this transition that the whole book of Acts is all about. Now verse 30 of Acts 21. And all the city was moved, and the people ran together, and they took Paul and drew him out of the temple. Okay, the temple again, make sure you understand it's a temple, not the synagogue. And forthwith the doors were shut. And as they went about to, what's the next word? Kill him. How many times has that happened back here? As they went forth to kill him, tidings came unto the chief captain of the band that all Jerusalem was in an uproar. Okay, make no mistake, this is Jerusalem, right? He's in Jerusalem, and they want to kill him. Verse 32, who immediately took soldiers and centurions and ran down unto them. And when they saw the chief captain and the soldiers, they left, beating of Paul. Okay, they're beating him. Remember, he got stoned back there in Acts 14. And they took him for dead. Verse 33, then the chief captain came near and took him and commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and demanded who he was and what he had done. And some cried one thing, and some another among the multitude. And when he could not know the certainty for the tumult, he commanded him to be carried into the castle. And when he came upon the stairs, so it was that he was borne of the soldiers for the violence of the people. And the multitude of the people followed after, crying, away with him. Sound like what happened to Christ back there. Away with him. Take him away. We don't need this guy. Verse 37, as Paul was led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? Who said, canst thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian which before these days made us an uproar, and led us out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers? But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, and citizen of no mean city. And I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. And when he had given him, pardon me, and when he had given him license, Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with the hand unto the people. And when there was made a great silence, he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue, saying. So now he's going to go into talking in the Hebrew tongue. And that is going to give him, pardon me, man, sorry gang.
All right. Do what you gotta do.
Speaking back in verse 39 now. All right, and he's, I beseech you to to speak unto the people. All right, speaking in the Hebrew tongue gives him great authority with the people. All right, as well as being a citizen of no mean city. All right, that gave him authority with the captain that brought him in there. All right, he's a friend of Rome. Okay, he's not of a mean city, of an adversarial city. And so Paul is going to speak to the people, and as we're going to see, tell you what, we may just go right into Acts 22 right now.
Well, you know what? That's not exactly right.
Okay,
It is now 10:38.
10:38. Okay. Let's just come down though. So 22, come down to chapter 22. We are going to end give me about 5 minutes, we'll be finished here. So when he starts talking, verse 3, and he says, I verily am a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and was zealous toward God, as ye all are this day. Okay, Paul studied at the feet of Gamaliel. And today, that would be like saying, you know, man, I'm one of the best lawyers in the city of Austin. I didn't just go to UT's law school. I went to Harvard Law School. I mean, Gamaliel was the man with the Jews. I mean, that was, you couldn't get a better law degree, if you will, back here in this day. So that's why I make the analogy like of going to Harvard Law or Yale Law, like all of our presidents seem to do, I guess, one or the other
Not our
of those
current
law
one.
schools. Yeah, that's right. How about that? Get me off subject again.
We could talk about his high school.
Okay. Tell you what I want to do anyway. I know, Brian, if you would, go ahead and,
Just got it.
yeah, go ahead and cut it.
Take questions. Take some questions, Greg.
Smarty.
Talk about 22.